Hey everyone, and welcome back to Middle-Aged Barbarians. As you can see, we're trying out a different format for season 2. I'm Eugene.
And I'm Eddie, and as Eugene just said, we are the middle-aged barbarians.
Okay. This is a little bit more of an intimate format where Eddie and I can converse. We can try to talk about, maybe put in some more current ideas, keep up with some of the old stuff, but mix in some new, feel around, see what's what.
Yeah, of course, and a lot of hot takes. This is most likely what's going to happen with this.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Well, hopefully it all goes well. Let us know in the comments if you like this new format. I mean, we're still thinking about how we're going to decorate this space, make it pretty for us, for you, and just, kick it off.
Yeah,
Kick it off with a new season,
Yeah, of course.
a little fresh.
So what's been on your mind, dude?
Everything's good. All good. Starting a new campaign with some new players, which will be interesting. Maybe a little bit along the line we can talk a bit about how that's going.
Yeah, for sure. That should be interesting. Are they like younger than us, or
No, they're actually a bunch of dudes our age that have never played or maybe played once a long time ago. And even the wife is playing, which is going to be
Your wife?
My wife.
Oh my God, that's gonna be very interesting.
I was surprised that she said she wanted to try it because, to be honest, she's never shown much interest. So I'm happy.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
happy
good.
for
That's
that.
good. That's quality time there.
Yeah. What about you? How are you doing?
Well, I'm fine. A bit busy, so I haven't been able to play as much. But it's always on my mind as usual.
Yeah.
We're here for that. A lot of board games.
That's cool. Anything new?
Well, no, I'm just playing the same old that I just ranked. I play a lot in board game arena, so turn-based, so I don't have to invest as much time. And I just cracked like a pretty high level on one of the games, and I've just accomplished 1,000 plays of another game, which is
Worldwide rank?
or world rank.
That's cool.
Yeah. In one game, I'm like 35th.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a pretty good player, and my mates with whom I play board games don't want to play with me anymore. That game in specific, obviously, because it's like the famous Mario Kart phenomenon. Have you ever heard of that?
I'm quite aware.
Have you done that? Has that happened to you?
I mean, like, just when you beat down your friend so bad that nobody wants to play.
Yeah, it's pretty frustrating. Yeah, I remember when we played back in the day a lot of fighting games, and that happened. Like Ernest was really good, and because he had the console,
They were his games.
yeah, and that was pretty nasty. Yeah, that's that, and yeah, that's what's been going on. I just want to ask you, speaking of that, because I don't know if everybody's aware, but Eugene is a psychologist, so by trade, so that brings interesting insights into the game. Now that you're playing with new players, what do you think is like the dimension as psychological benefits to role playing, or something like that? Have you ever like seen it firsthand? Because I've heard you mention a couple of papers here and there, but
Oh, when I did my master's degree, I actually did my master's degree in. I'm gonna try to translate it because we live in Mexico. Don't dox us. So it's in Spanish. It's intervención en violencia, which would be a sort of intervention in domestic violence situations. And when it came time to picking a subject for the thesis, I wanted to do something that I would actually enjoy doing. And I kind of went off a tangent. My professors let me, and I did an investigation on if there's like a correlation between people who play role-playing games and domestic abuse or any kind of violence in their day-to-day life. And I had started doing the research. I mean, there's not a lot of papers. A lot of the benefits that many sources cited for role-playing games obviously is better communication skills. They help with teamwork, and it's just like a bunch of benefits and stuff. Problem solving, not always having to have like winning as a goal, but I mean, it's gonna sound maybe a little cursy, a little coquette, like a little
corny. Yeah,
corny. Like the journey is
the reward.
It's the reward. It's the
course.
experiences and all that. And it's also a great place for people who are a little more introverted. I'm sure there's quite a few of us out there, to socialize and gather those.
Like
those
the
people
structure of
skills.
socializing, right? I'm not, well, at least in my experience, that helps, that it's a structured way of socializing, because sometimes I get confused.
Yeah, it does help a lot. I never finished the thesis. I did develop an instrument. I interviewed actually locally like 50 or 60 players, which in our community is a big number. And I had gotten down to like just processing all the data. It was actually quite positive for my hypothesis, which was that people who play role-playing games would not exercise as much violence, or maybe different types of violence in their day-to-day life. We're all susceptible to be, transgress those boundaries.
Of course.
But yeah, and it was very interesting. My time expired.
Oh.
So then I had to take like a complimentary course. And by the time I finished my complimentary course, the school had gathered like a certain certification where I was
and you
studying.
were able to graduate with
And
that.
since I had a high enough average GPA during the masters, they just gave me the title due to my grades.
Yeah, those sort of things that they do to increase graduation rates.
Well, I mean, it wasn't easy. You had to have a 9.5.
Of course.
Don't minimize my.
No.
I'm kidding. I'm joking.
No, yes. As we graduated college, we didn't do thesis because.
Well, that's because our university was so advanced that we had certain
Of course.
certification processes that once you garnered enough credits,
You were done with that.
actually, there's a lot of schools now, at least down here, that aren't doing thesis. They're doing more like
Exams.
they have to do a grade exam, and then they even give you options if you go to a postgraduate course or
You
something.
graduate automatically. Yeah, like that. Yeah.
And even at doctorate level, I know a friend who finished her doctorate in clinical psychology, and I think she did the thesis, but it wasn't a requirement. She's an overachiever. So
I've heard that sometimes for what you would call like laureate or valedictorian, or for honor roll, you have to do thesis. That's
it's
rather a
plus,
privilege than a requirement nowadays.
which is cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think we're getting a little bit off topic, but I hope they leave it in.
Yeah, quite a bit, but I mean, if landing it back to Dungeons and Dragons, that could be like an inspiration for a mage school. Imagine that, a mage school with all the bureaucracy of a modern.
That'd be something I'm sure you would enjoy.
Yeah, that's kind of my role. Yeah.
All right. So with this new format that we were mentioning, the evil producer, he is still around. He's the one that actually is kind of proposing these changes, and we're for it. Wants us to talk a little bit about current events.
Sure.
Why not?
Why not? History is still ongoing. It's a materialistic project that occurs via dialectics. Yeah, of course.
And the first topic that we're going to talk about, he has given us the quest to speak of, is, I don't know how aware or not you are, is this whole ordeal with, I hope I don't butcher his name, Joe Manganiello. Joe Manganiello?
I just remember him as the werewolf in True Blood.
Is the werewolf in True Blood. I know my wife remembers him from Magic Mike. I'm sure a lot of people remember him from Magic Mike.
I've never seen Magic Mike, and I remember him from Magic Mike.
There you go. And I mean, he's made quite a name for himself in the D&D community, the tabletop role-playing game community. So I don't know if you've heard about this latest, what can we call it? Drama, debacle, deception.
Yeah, stunt maybe would be the perfect word. I think it's a stunt, more likely that. Well, for those who are not aware, he did a spec short, I think. That's the main problem. We will never see it the light of day, but he made
like a pilot episode.
Like a pilot episode or a short, but most likely a short, because about Dragonlance, that very, very lovely camping setting that we had back in the day.
Well, we still have. I mean, don't forget, we had was this the content came out? It's Shadow of the Dragon Queen, if I'm not mistaken, was the name of the book. And it brought like all of the rules and all the world building and everything from Dragonlance into 5th edition.
Oh.
I don't know. I mean, I know I have a friend who's like super, super hardcore into Dragonlance, and he loves this whole like paladin chivalry and like those main core ideas from Dragonlance. And he was fascinated, and we started a campaign, but like we've mentioned before, real life takes precedence, and we had a couple of issues with players, and there were a bunch of new people, and we never followed through. But I know he's a real hardcore Dragonlance fan. But apparently, none is more hardcore than Joe Manganiello.
Yeah, spending his own money to do this. And what he did, he tried to pull a little Ryan Reynolds with Deadpool. He showed it to the executives that own the property. I believe it's Hasbro directly.
Hasbro. I mean, actually, if you'll allow me.
Of course. I mean, you're more of the research type. I'm more of the whispers. Yeah. And
I did a little bit of research. Let me know if you know what that's a reference to in the comments. Because to be honest, I'm not big into personalities and like this whole celebrity D&D kind of thing. I mean, I guess it's cool. I've just never really cared much about it. So maybe, I don't know, maybe my viewpoint is a bit skewed. But I took the task to research a little bit about a history with Joe and his endeavors, which, to be honest, I mean, the guy looks like he's really into the game. He really does project that image. I'm sure it's probably partly true. It has to be. Otherwise, he's one of the best actors that isn't really considered.
And we've seen his work. He's not one of the best actors that ever lived.
That's not fair. But yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm not an actor. You did more acting than me back in the day. And
so something very curious that I found is that 7 years ago, there was actually news about him writing a draft of a movie adaptation of Dragonlance. So this was 7 years ago. The script that he mentioned for the pilot TV show, he announced that a year ago. Let me go in order so I don't get lost. There was a movie adaptation based on a Dragonlance novel, Dragons of Autumn Twilight, with the writer John Castle. Now, curiously enough, I found a picture like on Reddit of what supposedly is the script cover, and the only name on it is John Castle. So maybe this co-authorship, maybe it wasn't like actually in the paperwork. Maybe he was helping him to PR and push it out, and, because Joe does know a lot of famous people. I mean, he was married to Sofia Vergara. I mean, even that has to give you connections and certain leeway amongst these people. I wouldn't know. Then in an interview on Collider Video in 2018, Joe mentions that the movie was canceled. Why was it canceled? I believe the reason that he gives is because Warner Brothers sold the rights to the IP. And this was back in 2018. I don't know exactly who they sold it to. Curiously enough, later on, I'll get to that later. Then last year was when there was the announcement of Joe. This was like on a Wizards of the Coast like update kind of thing. And he talks about a documentary. I think they named him Ambassador of D&D. I don't know if this is like an official title or it's just like
something they made up for him.
Yeah. And he will be, supposedly, this hasn't been canceled as far as I could see, hosting and co-directing a documentary with Kyle Newman and his brother Nick Manganiello, commemorating the 50th anniversary of D&D. Now I understand this should be coming out next month, probably March sometime, which would be the dates around our beloved game's 50th anniversary. But we'll see. We'll wait and see exactly what happens. Because one of the reasons he gave for the canceling of this latest pilot, which he says, have you heard him talk about how he describes it?
No. I'm sure you can give me a good insight into that.
I'm weary about mentioning something like this because I don't want it to be construed. And I even talked to the producer about it. But he gave me a lot of vibes of a certain politician that's not very liked by people. Because he talks like, I had the best script. And the producers that I showed it to outside were saying, amazed. It's the most amazing pilot I've read since Game of Thrones and since, what was the other reference? Yeah. Lord of the Rings and like comparing and like really bolstering himself up. I wrote the best scripts. I have the best scripts. 1,000 pages of information full of illustrations and information that you couldn't imagine. But, it's the other guy's fault, apparently it didn't work. So take that as you will.
Yeah,
Just
well, a
throwing
lot
it
of the
out there.
times maybe it's just the projected interest doesn't match the money that would have to be spent.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. And I mean, there has been a lot of heat on Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro. I mean, ever since last year.
Yeah, since they did those weird legal maneuvers.
Yeah, the whole changes to the open gaming license, and so I don't know if part of their changes to the upcoming D&D 1, which I really want to like look into a little bit more. I'd love to talk about that in another episode, because it's I don't know. I have mixed feelings about what's going on with the game, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't know. Personally, it makes me wonder who's actually like taking the ideas and calling the shots. How much of the complaints or the changes they're making on complaints. For example, let me try to remember specifically. There's change. Well, the changes, for example, there's no longer races. There's species. That's fine. I guess understandable. What I don't like is the fact that your species is now going to be more flavor than actual
Absolutely.
like game mechanics. So I can get the part of giving you more freedom, but I feel it takes away of like the I mean, it may sound stupid, the authenticity of the differences between the species. I mean, there's a reason that you would get the bonuses you get for being an elf, because the way they live, their lifespan, um, their customs, their traditions, and the way that they see themselves in this world with the thousands or infinite years, depending on who you read, as opposed to a human who knows that they're only going to live 60 years, maybe, unless they die when they're 20 in a tragic dungeon accident or something.
Yeah, because they didn't check traps.
Or compared to maybe hobbits. I mean, you know, halflings. Forgive me.
Halflings, yeah, hobbits
Sorry.
are. Yeah, Christopher Tolkien is gonna come and beat you up because of that.
Sorry. Yeah, like, you know, they live, I think, maybe 150 years, to 200 tops. So they're kind of more, I don't know, they're more aloof, they're more chill. They have different ways of viewing and living, and that those choices and those customs, I mean, the social affects the biological to an extent, I think. So those changes that they're making that give you like a more open, a more descriptive, like you can be a gnome, but you're not going to have a speed restriction because everybody moves 30 feet. I don't know. It gives me a really mixed vibe. And there were some like complaints about orcs. I think it were orcs or I'm trying to remember what they were called from Spelljammer. Githyanki?
The Githyanki or the Gitsarai.
Gitsarai. There was something along the lines too. I can't recall right now, but I know there was some kind of like drama, but I don't know how much is real. Like how much is actually the community speaking up and saying, we're tired of these things. We don't want this racism or this discrimination amongst these species anymore, and they're reacting, or if it's more like
real life politics.
yeah,
I'm
like a
guessing.
social play, like trying to, I don't know, put a little star on their lapel saying, look what we've done and look how we're progressing and changing things.
Which actually doesn't make sense a lot of the time, because if you don't have the conflict that mirrors the real life conflict, how do you resolve it thematically, I guess?
I don't know.
But it
That's
also brings
a
me
good
to something
question.
which is quite an interesting thing, and I would like your opinion on that. As you know, I play a lot of board games besides Dungeons and Dragons. There are a lot of board games that are kind of similar to Dungeons and Dragons in the sense that they're storytelling board games, but they work more like prompts. They give you like cards that give you a couple of prompts and you improvise. It's more like improv theater, but in a little bit of a structured way. But it's way looser than Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
What you're telling me, it sounds like Dungeons and Dragons is trying to be a little bit looser and not be as mechanically oriented, because you can still play your traditional elf in a way, just for you. The mechanics and the actual numbers do not match necessarily 100%.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to bring you into this. I have been playing since second edition. Second
of course.
edition of the Advanced D&D was super strict, man. You couldn't even dream of being a certain class if you didn't have
the stats,
the
of course.
prerequisites to do it. So, and back then, I mean, I may be misremembering. It was more years than I'd like to remember. Um, but I mean, if you didn't have at least that 13 score in, I don't know, wisdom, or 15 score, I forget what it was for a cleric, forget it, but choose something else. And if you had really, really, really bad scores, I mean, just roll again. Just do it again because it wasn't worth it. I don't know if there was a point buy system or anything back then, but it was a lot more complicated, a lot more strict, a lot more structured. So I'm used to that, or maybe I find comfort in that kind of a more mechanical or a more delineated way of making things. So that's probably my bias or my issue with the topic.
Yeah, that would be interesting to ask younger people about that. Younger people and, well, of course, females as well, because
there are a lot of fabled girl gamers playing, which is great. I love it.
Yeah. There's been an improvement in that regard, but I don't know. Yeah, because those sort of board games tend to be played more by females than most guys tend to play like really heavy Euro games that are like. One of my friends called it, "Yeah, dude, I work as an accountant on my day job. I don't want to be I don't want my entertainment to become accountants.
Yeah, I don't want to count coins and
move points and move little cubes and check the numbers and you one by one."
Yeah, I mean, so maybe trying to pull back into the topic, maybe there was something in the higher ups that they didn't see that they could reach these social goals going this avenue, or maybe it was something economical.
Yeah, it doesn't match with their company, the image they want to project. Because if I'm not mistaken, you mentioning Game of Thrones, it sounds like it was not as sunshine and rainbows.
I didn't mention Game of Thrones.
Joe did.
Joe mentioned Game of Thrones.
Yeah, so
best scripts in Game of Thrones.
Well, I mean, we all know how the last seasons.
I actually read that the pilot for Game of Thrones was pretty rough.
The original one, I've heard of that as well.
But I mean, maybe it was a backhanded compliment. I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. Only Joe knows exactly what they told him. But the funny thing is that I heard that the company that was going to be making, fact check me, the company that was going to be producing, or the one that actually produced this pilot episode, is called E1. And apparently Hasbro parted ways with E1 and sold it, or sold their rights to use it, or just sold their IPs to, if I'm not mistaken, Lionsgate Films.
Interesting.
So even if they would have produced it with them, my understanding is that, bro, that's theirs. It's gone. It's not ours anymore. But they don't have the IP maybe for like Dragonlance, but they're not going to use it. They're not going to do it. Something else that I found, which I found very interesting, back in April of last year, I found some articles mentioning that Paramount was going to produce like an 8-episode show about Dungeons and Dragons. No mention of Joe. They actually mentioned somebody else. I don't know who they are, but it's somebody called Drew Crivello, and it was going to be, the pilot was written by a gentleman called Rawson Marshall Thuber. But I also read that Paramount was working with this company E1. I tried to look and see if there was any news on if it was progressing, if they were making it or not. But apparently, if they sold E1, my thoughts would be that it'd be canceled as well.
Yeah, a lot of those projects become orphaned because the executives involved, they no longer care.
Now, there is another curious thing that, remember I mentioned a little while ago that Dragonlance put out they put out a module, a book, a project.
New material for updating
it. It didn't go very well. From what I understand, it wasn't very popular. The sales weren't what they expected them to be. So maybe that had certain backlash to them investing more in this IP if they feel that people weren't going to be invested in it, or they weren't going to spend their money on it.
Of course, yeah.
And then the movie that came out last year.
While good,
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really liked it, but it didn't work out as well financially for what I've understood.
So maybe I'm sure it's a combination of all these things. Because I mean, like I said, Joe. I don't want to speak any worse of him, because I don't know him and I really don't know what's going on. This is all just my BS speculation and stuff that I've read and I'm inferring from. But I mean, if you look at where he plays, the place is awesome. There's actually a video of there's the company that made the table. I think it's called like Blacktail Carpentry Studio or something like that. I forget the name. Anybody can just look it up. Just put Joe Manganiello's D&D table, and he had this thing commissioned. It's this huge epoxy river table. It's beautiful, and they show them when they bring it into the house. Now, the weird thing is that when they had the video, it's up on a second floor. It's not in the basement, so I don't know exactly when the transition happened. Probably after, but it was quite the ordeal watching them lift this thing up and balancing it and putting it in the room.
I know. Remember, my family makes furniture, so I've seen that.
Yeah, so that's crazy. The miniatures he has, like all the money, obviously, he has access to
Yes,
these resources.
probably some stuff they also gift him.
Probably. I mean, he has these cool like mind flayer heads mounted on the wall and dragon heads and a bunch of just really, really cool shit. A hanging beholder from stuff that I've seen. And then, he has, I don't know if you've seen his clothing line that he has called Death Saves.
Yeah.
I went on the webpage. It's a little weird looking. Everything was on sale. Most things were sold out. So maybe, I don't know.
It's more likely limited edition, or they're not large runs, which is something that there's also, like I said, the balance between how much demand there is, because Dragonlance it was really kind of big in the 90s.
Yeah, but I mean, I remember third edition Dragonlance probably wasn't even there.
Yeah, they made like fan versions with the I believe with the open gaming license, but
and a third edition, there was it was mainly Forgotten Realms, Eberron, but I think Eberron came in fourth.
no, it wasn't third, but it was
Toward
kind
the
of
end.
the end, towards the end. Yeah, there was already Pathfinder, kind of at the same time.
Yeah, Pathfinder. Yeah. Yeah, and I know Eberron was cool. I liked Eberron, the whole inclusion of the Warforged and the Goliath.
Yeah, and the
Great
premise
system.
of immoral ambiguity is something.
That was a really cool addition. I mean, one of my personal favorites, Ravenloft. I think I mention it every episode I can. Has been around as well. Dragonlance kind of disappeared.
Yeah, there's probably some interesting issues with licensing and so forth behind the scenes that we don't know about, and that's why it has been a little gone to the wayside. But that's the thing. Except probably Joe Manganiello is a really hardcore fan, because trying to resurrect that from the 90s to now, it's like very interesting. I remember the books. My girlfriend, who doesn't even play, she read all the books back in the day.
I think the only Dragonlance novel I read was The Night of the Black Rose, with Lord Soth.
Not the Lord Sod one, which was a crossover with Ravenloft, if I'm not mistaken.
He later gets sucked into the demiplane of dread, and he's given
His own domain, yeah.
It was Soth, and it was what was this guy, Von Strad? I always confuse him with the Magic the Gathering vampire.
Oh, that's the Baron Sengir. That's
The
the
Singears, yeah, it was around the same time when I kind of got into both things.
yeah.
Don't let the evil producer hear me talking about magic. 'Cause
Yeah, he really likes magic. He's a judge, so
he's a big time magic dude.
yeah. I played a little bit of magic. Yeah, actually, back in the day, I don't know if I ever told you, we went on a trip to a neighborhood city, like a 2-hour trip. We went to a tournament, and I won the tournament.
That's cool. No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, because it was, I don't know if you guys know about the draft format where you pass cards. The player next to me was the opponent that defeated the producer, because I passed in really good cards that I didn't need.
Oh, wait. You traveled with him back in the day?
Yeah,
That's cool, man.
yeah, that was pretty cool. That's the only time I won a sort of big tournament, back when I played a little bit more Magic. I mean, nowadays, yeah, if you give me cards, I know how to tap for mana. And,
Nah, man. Ain't nobody got time for that.
oh, you have to pick and choose. My friend Alex, he loves all this sort of stuff, and he has 3 kids, and he plays a lot of video games, a lot of board games. And then we ask him, dude, how do you do it? He doesn't watch movies or TV. He says, I don't have time for that. Either I play video games, or be with my family, or board games. But yeah, there's no time for movies.
Pick your battles, I guess.
Yeah, pick your poison, I guess, more than battles. Yeah.
One thing, I don't know, I'd like to bring it up in discussion, kind of like to maybe not end the episode, but to kind of close it a little bit, is what I said in the beginning. What I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts about like all these celebrities that have popped up into the gaming sphere, whatever you want to call it? Again, I mean, I go back to when we started playing.
Yeah, I think Vin Diesel was the first one that like came out as a big nerd.
He wrote the foreword, no, for one of the
For a
editions.
third edition book, yeah, for 3.5 if I'm not mistaken.
But like I remember, this was, and I need to find my hipster glasses, I guess, to put it on. Like, oh, I was playing Dungeons and Dragons before it was cool, and kind of vibe. But really, I mean, there wasn't this cult. There wasn't this celebrity cult behind gaming. And I don't mean, and I don't want to refer to people who are actually very dedicated and very involved, who have gained like notoriety and celebrity status. That's awesome. That's cool. But it's kind of like these people who apparently in their social life or whatever you like, the visibility, the visual part aspect of your life have always been somewhere else, and then in the past couple of years have kind of like popped in and say, hey, guess what, I'm a geek too, I like playing. For example, this guy Joe is always talking about his celebrity games, and they've done a lot of videos and like shows and stuff with them playing, and he mentions like Vince Vaughn, he mentions Big Show and Tom Morello from Rage Against, and just like a bunch of big names and a bunch of celebrities. He was on an interview with Stephen Colbert, and he kind of got schooled by Stephen Colbert, which I thought was funny. But even Stephen Colbert was like, oh man, I used to play in college all the time. And I remember second edition and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And like Joe would spit out, oh, my character was Tiamat. Oh, and the other guy was, oh, Bahamut. And they started like, spitting back, I mean, kind of big names, things you could probably memorize if you were an actor. But giving them the benefit of the doubt again. I don't know where all these people came from.
I'm guessing, and I'm not the psychologist you are, but maybe what I'll tell you, you can help me make sense. I think that the issue is that, not that they do it. For instance, Post Malone just bought like $1 million, few $1 million Magic the Gathering card. God. But I don't feel like he's trying to push that as his image. It's just a thing he does, like a random thing he does.
It's a quirk.
It's a quirk, yeah. Something that Henry Cavill just mentions. Oh yeah, I like Warhammer, yeah, and I like building PCs. That's cool. But I don't see that as being used as a tool for establishing a public image. I think that's probably what the issue that you have with that. It's not just something that they do as people, but it's something that they do as public personalities, and that feels a little disingenuous, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It irks me a little bit every time.
Yeah, because I'm guessing you don't feel the same for those sort of celebrity dungeon masters that become a little.
Well, like Matt Mercer. I mean, I never really followed him. I honestly never watched Critical Role until Vox Machina came out, and I really liked the cartoon. I mean, I just, if I had the time to sit and watch 7 people play Dungeons and Dragons,
I'd rather play myself.
Exactly. That being said, I mean, I do like to partake in other things. For example, I've been listening to a podcast, actually trying to catch up because it's been running for a couple of years, called the Stinky Dragon Podcast.
Oh yeah, you showed me a couple of shorts of that. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I think a couple months or even like a year ago, they started making like shorts with puppets and animation and stuff. But the storytelling has been going on for quite a while. Actually, I think they started toward the end of the COVID outbreak. What do you call this? Like the lockdowns and all that. It popped. And so that's interesting. But again, it's like, we're people who are in the trade, we're people who are in the hobby, and we're doing so well, or it's become so popular that we gain notoriety. It's not like, I feel it's like piggybacking on the hobby.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, well, this is, for those who don't know, I'm a graphic designer, so I know a lot about communication. So that's where I would focus this analysis. I think that due to the fact that there's no kind of mainstream culture anymore, and there are a little bit of niches going around for communications. I mean, you can be as specific as you want. Like, I don't know, there's probably like Yeah, there's probably like LGBT friendly Dungeons and Dragon content, for instance.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah, of course. And you can see like with a feminist bent, with a Marxist Leninist bent, or whatever, no? I'm guessing that there's a lot of analysis that I'm sure that people like them, they actually do like these things, but maybe they were not as deep in them, or they weren't as big a part of their identity, and they chose to do them to appeal to a niche, to have a certain audience works with that. I mean, I'm reminded of, I don't know if you ever dove into the speedrunning community.
A little bit, but only in like Dark Souls and Demon Souls.
Yeah, there are a couple of streamers that are also big gym guys. So this is this weird crossover of they're these really buff fitness gurus that are also streamers.
You mentioned it now, and I just remembered I saw one of the things that this guy was on. I mean, he's a big dude. He's like 6'4",
and
he's
like,
obviously physically fit. But he was there with like Big Show, and I think there were a couple other dudes that were
bigger
not as
than
big
him.
as Big Show, but they were up there, and they were calling it. Wait, I think I wrote the name down. I may not have. It was something like Dungeons and Bros, or Bros and Dragons, and something like that. And I was like, oh, okay, that's funny. I found it a little funny. You know, a bunch of meatheads throwing dice. That's great.
Well, yeah. I mean, have you ever seen that episode of the IT Crowd where they played Dungeons and Dragons? It's pretty funny.
I believe I did. I don't remember it, but I know I saw the whole. I think it's just 1 or 2 seasons long. I saw them both. If there was
it's really short. But in this episode, they rather than taking this network, these big executives, rather than taking them to a strip.
Oh, with the like the boss's son that inherited the company.
Something. Yeah, exactly.
And the vampire dude that was in the basement.
That's the one. Yeah, and they had to take the executives for entertainment, but originally they were supposed to go to strip clubs and so forth. But the woman that was assigned for the job didn't want to do it, and they ended up playing D&D with them, which was pretty funny because they liked it because of the experience. The experience was very interesting. So there's also that. Maybe there's a little bit of piggybacking. Maybe there's a new group opening up to that.
Well, I mean that's always been, I guess, somebody's goal, is to get this more open, more popular, more accessible. So maybe it's just me being upset that.
No, but there's a bit of that. A lot of based on my friends in the LGBT community that are also academics, communication-based academics, we've also talked a little bit about that subject, that being LGBT back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, we're talking people even older than us, it was really transgressive. Being openly gay, being openly so forth and so forth. And it was like a real battle that you fought one-on-one. Like you had like very, very visible aggression against you. So you felt really heroic with the battle. And they said, well, now it's a lot of the stuff, not everything, obviously. There's still discrimination. There's still a lot of discrete discrimination. But a lot of it doesn't feel as, like a lot of it feels really mundane. And I think that's a bit of what happens as well when we see stuff like that, like these semi-piggybacking, maybe celebrities getting into our hobby, which has been us, which has been a lot of our identity being different, and kind of feels like, well, now it's kind of not as special maybe, but it's still special. I mean, it's the experience we give it to it. But
I lose no sleep thinking about them enjoying it. That's not an issue, but it just kind of irritates.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an ick. Yeah, and that's what they've told me. It's a little bit uncomfortable because a lot of the stuff that defined you, well, it's no longer. It's not that it's not valid, but it's not as pressing, I guess. Not to minimize. Obviously, there's still struggle in a lot of places, which these marginalized communities need a lot of work. I mean, here in Mexico in particular, oh my God, it's. Oh, well, you work with that. I mean, you see it firsthand. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so then, I don't know. Let's kind of like recap a little bit. There was going to be a show by Joe, and it got canceled. Okay.
But yeah, the stunt was interesting, and it has been done before. We talked about it in the pre-show. Remember that they did it with Mortal Kombat and with, like I mentioned, Deadpool with Ryan Reynolds. Sometimes that sort of action could work, but it didn't work in this case.
Maybe.
For various reasons. But, well, I mean, it's a bridge to talk about a lot of other random stuff, I guess.
Okay, dokie. Well, I think we'll
I
end it
think
here.
we're wrapping it up for today. Yeah, I think we're getting to.
I don't even know how long we've been on. We'll figure it out later.
Yeah, we'll edit it, and the evil producer and his editing minions will take care of that.
Hopefully they'll leave it in whole. Anyway, it's great having you all with us here again. We will hopefully be seeing more of you and us. Leave your comments, suggestions. If you agree with what we said, if you have any counterpoints, if you know Joe personally, or if you are Joe and you want to cuss us out and tell us you guys don't know shit,
That would be lovely.
go
Yes.
for it. I'd appreciate it. And I guess, we'll see y'all in the next episode. And remember to
Rage responsibly, please.
yes, rate responsibly.
That's nice having these microphones that we can do this sort of stuff.
All right, see you next episode.
See you.
Take care.
Roll the dice!